We made a very conscious decision here administratively to just include this opportunity for you guys. You're older, and I think this is a unique opportunity, and we are very convinced that juniors and seniors can handle this. We're running kind of a loosey-goosey thing for this morning, and here's how this is going to work. Okay, there's a couple of basic things we got to get settled down here this morning, and I want you to understand a couple of things. There's no pop and no water and no snacks in here, okay? Please respect the integrity of the theater arts program in that regard, okay? I don't want you in here sipping on Gatorade and water and all that stuff this morning. Please do not do that. Okay? Also, during this presentation, I want your cell phones off. So turn them off. As soon as Sammy Oak comes up to do an introduction, I want them off. I don't want you cheating with them. I don't want you on your iPads, and I don't want you on your iPhones. This is an opportunity and a presentation where that is going to be very disrespectful if you are sitting there with your lights on your iPhone, okay? So please don't do that. This is a very unique opportunity for us this morning. We want this to go well. You are required to be here both periods, okay? So for the entire presentation, basically it's periods 1, 2, and 3. You will be here and you will stay here, okay? All right, I believe there's a break at 10:15. It's going to be very short. I don't want you in the hallways. The break is to go out in the foyer, to go to the potty rooms. They're both open, and you stay in this area, okay? You don't go to your lockers or down to get a snack. Okay, what else? All right. You're going to have teachers that are going to be moving in and out of here because the teachers that have mixed classes of 10th, 11th, and 12th graders are going to have 10th graders this morning that are going to have class without the juniors and seniors. So the teachers are going to come and go. You guys just stay here, okay? All right. Any questions? So where's Sammy at here? Is he around somewhere? All right. I don't know. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, which is great, but you're the man, so Sammy Oak. Sammy is our, yes, I call him Sammy. I should say Mr. Oak. He's a good man, and he'll walk us through this morning. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be here today. Some of you guys know me, especially if you're in the EL program. I'm the EL director, or the EL coordinator for the district here. So I run and supervise the English Learner program at all levels and at all schools in our district here. Today we're going to show you a movie called The Good Lie. Let me see a show of hands. How many of you have seen that movie or heard of that movie before? Okay, great. The Good Lie talks about particularly the Sudanese refugee story of what happened in Sudan and how they were able to come here to the United States and exemplifies their struggles here in the United States to readjust to life here. However, the story about readjustment to life in America here, many of our refugees and immigrants can relate to, and you'll see that very clearly in the movie. After the movie, Kuoth herself, who's one of the main actresses in that movie, will be here to answer any questions you may have. So I encourage you guys to ask her questions about her life, her personal journey here to America, or if you're interested in how she became a Hollywood actress, you can certainly ask her about that as well. Any questions? All right, so at this time, I think we're ready to start the movie. Raise your hand here if you're either a refugee or immigrant to Faribault. You know, 25% of our school district now, or even more, is made up of refugees and immigrants. I myself am a refugee as well. My family and I came to the United States from Cambodia in the 1980s. And to me, this movie exemplifies the refugee struggle better than any other movie that I've seen. For those of you who are refugees or immigrants here, raise your hand, or actually let's give a clap if you guys remember the IOM bag that they came in at the airport. You know, everything that they talked about, this is a true story. And all events that happened in the movie here were true. For many of us refugees, our journey is not in our control. We don't get to decide when we get to come to the United States, and every day we wake up in the morning and look at our names on the board to see whether or not we were selected to come. Not to the United States, but just to be selected to be brought away from the refugee camps. For many of us, the refugee camps were still too close to what we experienced during war. And then there's joy and celebration mixed with sadness when we see our names on there. Joy finally because we can move from just surviving to finally starting to live again, but also sadness for the families and friends that will still be leaving behind in the refugee camps. And for many of us, we never get to come out of the refugee camps as well. And when we get to the United States or to whatever country we are decided to where we need to go, we don't even get the place to decide where we're gonna stay. Myself personally, my great-grandfather, who was already 78 years old at the time, came with my grandfather and all his children, and then myself, I was 2 years old at the time. But he had to stay in San Francisco while all of us were boarded on a plane to Minnesota. So again, when we thought we were going to be together, we were again separated, and we were apart. And it took 5 or 6 more years before we were able to save enough money to bring my great-grandfather back with us. And this trip, this journey is never free. As you guys may see in the movie, you have to pay back the plane tickets and any other ticket that came, that brought you to your destination. It took 11 years for my family to finally pay off our plane tickets. And this story is not unique to me, nor just the Sudanese experience. For all us refugees and all immigrants, we're kind of like a broken puzzle that needs to be put back together. All of us have experienced loss, and all of us have experienced that journey to come back to not only find ourselves, but find the people that we love. As we break now, we're going to take a break for about 10 minutes for you guys to be able to use the bathroom and reflect on the movie. Come back here in about 10 minutes, and then get ready for our main attraction, because Kuoth Wiel, the actress who played Abital, will be here to speak to us. All right? Thank you. Hello. Hello. You guys like the movie? Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for the main attraction of the day? You know, I've never been around celebrities before, so I was a little starstruck today when I saw Kuoth. I didn't know how to act, but I got control of myself really fast and you know, got professional. So I'm okay if you guys are wondering. So if I trip over my words a little bit, just know it's me being a little starstruck, okay? But anyways, it is an honor for me to be able to introduce Kuoth Wiel. Kuoth was born in Ethiopia. Her parents were refugees and then later became UN aid workers in refugee camps. And they would travel from refugee camp to refugee camp throughout Africa. In 1998, Kuoth came to the United States at the age of 8. She attended Faribault Lutheran schools and then transferred for her high school years to Faribault High School, where she graduated in the year 2009. So you know, it's not every day that you have a Hollywood star graduate from your high school and then be so willing to come back and share her story and her journey to empower all of us here in our school district. Kuoth is definitely an excellent role model to us all. She went to Oxford and graduated in 2013 with a BA in social psychology. During her college years, she began modeling and then was selected to star in the movie The Good Lie as Abital in 2013. Kuoth's success is still ongoing. She's also starring in an upcoming thriller, a psychological thriller called Headlock. So ladies and gentlemen, please help me give a warm welcome to Kuoth Wiel.
Thank you for that beautiful and awkward introduction. Yeah, so basically, I think maybe I should start with my own background of how maybe I came to the US so that, you know, because I feel like it's going to be asked a lot. So I'll start with that, and then after that, you guys can ask me any question you like, or anything about me, the film, or whatever. So as Sam introduced, I was born in a refugee camp in Ethiopia, in a place called Itang, and at the time it was one of the largest refugee camps in East Africa with a population of about 100,000 people. And so very early I knew about the aspect of, you know, being in a refugee camp and what that was like. And very often, my parents were aid workers for the UN, so we traveled a lot from Sudan and Ethiopia, moving back and forth. And so coming to the US was also a very random occurrence for me and my family because it kind of happened in a place where we didn't really expect it. I had a brother who was a lost boy, and he ended up in Kenya, and he eventually immigrated to the US with a group of his friends, and he settled in Tennessee at first and then went to Minneapolis. And that was where I had met him for the first time in 1998. And so, yeah, so for me, it was kind of like getting to know my family in a different way than I had when I was in Sudan and Ethiopia. And from that, kind of shaped my experiences into school and transitioning from Ethiopian school and American school and things like that. So, yeah.
At this moment, we're going to open it up to you guys. If you guys have any questions to ask Kuoth at all, either about the movie, the Sudanese refugee experience, or about Kuoth's personal journey here in America too, feel free. Maddie and I will walk around and pass the microphones to you. Anybody want to start with a question? Okay.
How was your first winter in the U.S.?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So when we had first came to the U.S., we landed in Minneapolis. I remember the first airport we were in was Chicago O'Hare, and we came in June, so technically it wasn't cold at the time. And I remember people saying, "Oh yeah, it's gonna be cold or whatever." You know, we didn't take it really serious. I remember because I had never seen snow. It doesn't snow in Ethiopia or Sudan, so technically it was just like the weirdest thing that I had ever seen. And then we had to go outside and be around it and things like that. So it was still one of the hardest like transitions into the weather in that case. But I don't
happen to you at all?
So that scene that you had seen, that's like something that it's almost like it's a program for everyone that's transitioning into, I guess, resettling into another country. Everyone would go through that. They tried to give you like a course of what you should expect and where you're going, and we had to go through that. But I mean, I think it's just to show the cultural differences in terms of, I would say, like for us, I remember we learned about time. Time is a different concept in Africa than it is in America. Where time, in a way, for us, time is based on the day. It's based on, you track it with the sun. You don't really track it in, the clock and say you have to be here at this time. So that was like a really one thing that I thought was kind of crucial, was that aspect of things. But I think it was, the subtle nuances, some things that you can't learn in a course. You obviously have to learn through experiences and things like that. But I think it was a very crucial thing that they had done that to even show the, ice. Because you don't know what ice is like. You don't know what, people didn't have like refrigerators for you to even look at and say, oh yeah, I know what that is, and things like that. So that was a very real experience for that. And the guy who actually was a part of teaching the class that you see in the film, that was inspired by real person. His name is Sasha Chanoff, and he was in, I think it was that 20 Minutes piece. Is it 2020 piece? Yeah, on The Last Boys. So yeah.
Oh, here's a question over here.
What was your favorite food when you came to America?
The one thing I've actually noticed is that a lot of American foods are actually adapted from other cultures in that aspect. I liked pizza. Came to find out pizza's Italian. No, I mean, I kind of I like different varieties of foods. Just depends. Right now I'm really into like pho, Vietnamese food. So it just depends on what is there. But I think food itself too, it has a story of, the culture, where these people are from, the kind of spices that people use and things like that. But I don't know, maybe all-time American food would be burgers when I used to eat burgers. Yeah.
Were you ever in any school plays?
A school place?
Were you ever
Like
in
theater.
school plays?
Oh, a school play. Actually, no, not at the high school. I remember when I was at high school, I was actually really busy with sports, which is very unfortunate because I really wanted to act and everything in that sense. But I became more serious about acting when I was in college. I took some acting courses and things like that, but I was also doing modeling at the time, so did a lot of commercial acting as well. But this film was my very first feature film in sense of, taking it more seriously to the next level. And I felt like it kind of, at the time, I don't think I was confident in myself in terms of really diving into it. And this really, I feel like it kind of asserted a lot of things that I felt about me, myself, and acting. And once, I remember the very first day of filming, it was with Reese, and I was the most nervous person in the world. And I think after that, I realized that, this is something that I want to do, and I'm very passionate about it, and I'm very happy doing it. And yeah, so that was my journey into filming, but I think now I love it.
Do you have a question on this side here?
What was your first day at school like in America?
See, I think what I noticed is that school in Africa is completely different from what it is in America. I know in Africa they're very disciplined, and it's more in terms of you as an individual wanting to be in school, because when I lived in the city, our parents had to pay for school. School wasn't, it wasn't free. Your parents have to pay and all this stuff. So you have more responsibility in terms of showing up, in terms of doing your homework. It's much more discipline. I felt like our teachers were very, very disciplined on us. And in America, I feel that it's more of it's more mandatory in terms of, showing up and things like that. The value of education is much different because, you're not yearning, you're kind of required to be here. So in a way, I feel like valuing it is much different than it would be in Africa. And I remember our parents are very strict on school because they felt that because they didn't have an education, it was kind of a way for us to speak for them in that sense. So school to us is very valuable in a sense because you don't necessarily get to go to school in Africa. I remember in refugee camps, like classes are very crowded. You don't have a pen or pencil. You share the pen or pencil with your family. And, at times it was just like overwhelming. And I remember you had like one teacher who would struggle to even teach the kids because there was no books, there's no resources, there's no place for you to even sit down and all that stuff. So we appreciated school more once we got to the US.
Any question on that side of the room?
Here in our school, we have a lot of immigrants and possibly refugees. When you came to America, did you feel welcomed or did you feel like outcasted, and how were you treated? How did you feel about it?
It's a really good question. I think it just all depends on the knowledge that the community has on the newcomers or the refugees that are there. Because when we first came to Faribault, the community was very welcoming. We had, when I first went to Faribault Lutheran schools, we had families that would reach out to us. They would take time out of their day to come pick us up from school and things like that. So that was for us, it was very encouraging because they went out of their way to reach out. But I think it all depends on the knowledge that the community has on who's the newcomer, who's arriving, and also the background story, where these people came from. Because for us, we were very fortunate that they knew that there was a war in Sudan and that, we immigrated here and, a lot of our parents also had a hard time as well transitioning into the culture. I remember as a young child, I had to translate. I would have to translate for my parents because I was the only person who could speak both languages and things like that. So I'd be taken out of school, and because my teachers were understanding of where I'm from, they would excuse that because in a way, it's like I'm the only person who can do it. So I think it just all depends on the community itself, how they're willing to have an open mind and to reach out to the people that necessarily would need their help. But I felt it was kind of a smooth transition. Obviously, there were rough parts in terms of dealing with the societal aspect of being from another country as well, and being an immigrant as well. And I struggle with it myself, and I think the community also had time struggling with it too, because obviously you have different cultural norms that they probably have a harder time understanding. And I think my parents or people who are necessarily older too, because they're not, basically taught into what these little nuances are, so they have a harder time as well. But I think it's about, knowledge and education on the whole aspect of immigration and things like that.
We'll take one more question on that side, and then we'll turn it back over to this side over here.
If it's not too personal, the story of your brother who was a lost boy, what his life was like, and if possible, what his life is like now.
Okay. So basically, he was studying, he was in school in Ethiopia at the time, and then the war pushed him out, and he had to go back into Sudan, and then from there, he went to Kenya. And through Kenya, he immigrated with a group of friends. I think they're all teenagers at the time. And once they got to the US, there was a program set up there was a bill set up that if you came to the US as an orphan, or if you didn't have anybody with you, you could technically bring your family over to America, and that was how we came about that. So at the time, he was in he was in high school at the time we came, and he graduated from there. I think he went to community college, but he passed away in 2009. He went back to Sudan to visit family, and so it was just out of like a weird chance occurrence, but that was his story.
Any questions on this side over here? We'll go here and then we'll go you afterwards.
So you said that you went to Faribault Lutheran schools. Was that a choice, or was it a choice that your parents made for you? So like, is that faith a part of your life now?
Can you repeat that? I couldn't hear it.
I guess what I'm asking is, was that a choice that you made, that faith was a part of you, or was it a choice your parents made for you?
Oh, that's a really good one. I think it was because we had, I guess my parents had a Christian background in terms of that, and the church was very welcoming of us, and I think that's the choice that they felt was best, because we could be more in a smaller setting, which meant that they could focus on us more, since we had to learn English in that summer that we came, and you have to catch up with the writing and the reading aspect of where you're at technically academically. And in Ethiopia, the school wasn't really up to where we were at once you came to America. So it was a very rigorous process. So they felt like the school could cater to us more than we would if we had went somewhere else.
How do you suggest we make you guys feel more welcome? So you don't feel like you're outcasts?
I would say basically it's about inclusion. It's about education in terms of having awareness of where each person is from, because I feel like I always tell people, I'm like, you can learn a lot about the world just by knowing the countries in Africa, because a lot of people think that Africa is one country, and it's not. It's a continent. It's that aspect of knowing geology, geography, and knowing where people come from in terms of that, but also knowing, the cultures that are there and what are the positive things you can learn from these cultures. When I speak in schools, I've always had kids, ask the same question, and I must always say, it's about basically reaching out to your community. It's about having an open arm and saying, hey, what is your story? Because you can learn a lot about someone just by knowing where the commonalities are from their story with yours, because we're all human. We all start out at a certain place, and I feel like even here in America, this is a country of immigrants. Unless you're Native American, technically your parents were immigrants or your ancestors were immigrants at one point. And so where I am at right now is where your ancestors were at years ago. And to have that, aspect of learning that, how do you transition into a culture that is necessarily, built up in a way that you have to kind of fit in, and where do you fit in? Where do I fit in? And how can I help you in terms of, you feeling more welcome? And so I think it's about not looking at it as a them and us situation. We are one, technically. We all have this, we can all share a story, and I feel like it's about not looking at things from a single narrative and looking at things from a narrow view. You have to have an open mind. And I think that learning about other cultures definitely opens your mind to a lot of things. And but it's also, I travel a lot and I meet people from all over the place. And just to find the little things, the similarities that they have with me and my life, it's kind of uplifting and optimistic in a way.
Is there a question on that side? We have a couple on this side over here as well. Maddie, why don't you go on your side first, and then we'll.
How was the making of the movie? What was your favorite part, and did you do a lot of traveling?
Yes, I would say my favorite part maybe it's because when I was growing up, I didn't really really get in depth about learning about the Sudanese war or where I come from in terms of, getting deep into it because, everyone's in the phase of moving on. You don't want to dwell on traumatic events or situations and things like that. So doing the movie for me was an educational process. I got to meet a lot of women who inspired me, who obviously had the same story as Abital, who went through that kind of life. And it opened my mind to so many different things, and it opened a lot of doors for me now that with my work in advocacy, I'm able to talk about different stories because the different stories that I've heard, and I can kind of be a voice to people who may not necessarily be heard. But my favorite, I think, besides that, we travel a lot actually. But I think going back to we shot in South Africa. The African portion of the film was shot in South Africa, and some of it was in Kakuma refugee camp as well. But I think going back to Africa and reconnecting, I think I felt, with the land itself, because I hadn't seen, Africa in 20-something years. I hadn't seen, the red dirt that you see in there. And that's like, for me, it was a very, very, I think it was like a coming home kind of a thing. And I feel like anywhere I feel in Africa is kind of home to me.
We have a couple on this side here.
When were you first introduced to the English language?
In Africa. I mean, we watch films, you watch MTV, pop cultures, there and things like that. In Sudan, the main language is English and Arabic. So it was introduced to me at a very young age. Our parents obviously were introduced to the English language at a very long time because, if you learn about the history of Sudan, it used to be Anglo-Egyptian rule. So at that time, it had kind of like a British influence. And even today, we have like tea time and things like that because we have that English influence there as well. So English was introduced to me at from early on, yeah.
Oh, I go? Okay. How did you make it out of Faribault and into like Hollywood and making movies?
Well, no, I mean, I like Faribault. I feel like it was a great place to grow up. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can learn about yourself from just, being here. I think I had a good childhood in terms of, being around friends, and the friendships that I made here are still strong. I still come back and say hi to my teachers and things like that. But I think it's about, for me, transitioning from a small town, and then I went to college in Minneapolis. So in a way, I kind of got to see the feel of a city, and then moved to Los Angeles about 2 years ago. So in a way, it's kind of, for me, it was like a transition. You go from one thing to the other. But, I mean, I don't really see, such a huge, obviously there's like, atmosphere is different, culturally. People don't understand that America has different cultures everywhere you go. Culturally, it's different, I remember being there, it's like people don't eat tater tot hot dish in LA. So, it's different like that, where they have different traditions that they do there. I mean, obviously the weather is nice there, so you don't have to worry about shoveling or having, cars that have wheels that can handle the snow. Like, no, that doesn't happen there. So in a way, it kind of made me appreciate the contrast of places that I go to, and even everywhere that I travel in the U.S. Every town that I've been to, every city that I've been to has like a strong, something that makes them strong, and I feel like Faribault itself has this sense of like, community to me. I come here and I'm welcomed, and I love that.
How did you start your acting career?
So I was in college. I was modeling and also doing some commercial acting, but I guess The Good Lie started off my acting career in such a huge way. And I remember I always tell young actors, it's about work. It's about working. You have to look at it in a professional setting. With any work that you do, you have athletes. How do you become, a world-class athlete? You train. And in anything that you want to achieve, you have to train. And so for me, I always look at it, there's more that you can learn, but there's always a lot more that you can do in terms of how much you can give to yourself and what you can do to obviously achieve the success that you want. But I think it's just about working. And if I didn't look at it like it was work, I don't think that I would be where I'm at today, because we had to wake up at 5 a.m. to be on set, and sometimes you don't get to go home until 2 a.m. You're stressed out and you're tired and you're dealing with all these things. But it's like that, you have to wake up for school every morning. Everything is kind of groomed and trained into what you want to do in life, and I think that having that kind of mindset really helps a lot with acting, and you just have to persevere and keep at it.
Do we have another one on that side before we move back over here? Okay. Well, I saw a hand on this area a little bit earlier, so let's go you and then you in the back there, okay?
Do you still talk with the actors that you acted with?
Do I feel confident?
Or do you still talk to the actors that you acted with? Do you still talk to them?
Oh, yeah. So I guess to give a background of the actors in the film, all the kids that you saw in the beginning, they are children of lost boys and girls. And so we learned a lot just even having their parents around on set, because they taught us a lot about, their journey as well, what they went into. But to see their kids relive what they went through, it was a bit it was hard. It was hard for them. The guy who plays Paul and Jeremiah, they're Sudanese refugees, and they were both child soldiers as children when they were growing up. The character who plays my mayor, Arnold, he is a son of a Sudanese refugee, and his parents escaped to London when he was about 2 years old, so he's a Brit. He is straight up Brit. It's so funny. Just talking to them and seeing where their careers are going now, it's very amazing just to see how much they've achieved. I know Gare, who plays Jeremiah, he just recently became the Goodwill Ambassador for UNHCR, and that's like something he's always wanted to do since he was so involved in refugee work and things like that.
Yeah. What was the greeting when they first met, the brother?
What was the
greeting?
Sorry.
It was a greeting with a hand in the dirt.
Oh, that game. Okay. Yeah, so this is how detailed the actual script was. I remember reading it, and that's actually a game that is that they play, because culturally, Sudanese people are very connected to their ancestors, and they believe that, ancestors are influencing your life I guess they have in the past, but are also very prevalent in the future. And so what they would do is, I think it's a game to basically name your ancestors by rank, by generation and things like that. And I felt like that was very crucial to put in there, because even I know my family from like 20 generations back. I can name each and every single one of them, so that I think they do it so that your connection with people, the people around you, because culturally, it's a community culture, and so everyone basically thrives from being in the community. And it kind of, maybe for me, it's kind of different from the American culture as well, because in America, we're kind of taught to be individuals, and where, most prevalently in Africa and other cultures, you're taught to think for the community. What can you bring into, to the community? What can you benefit from being in a community, and that kind of aspect of things? And sometimes I find even myself struggling with it, because, you're kind of just like, oh yeah, you wanted to mind your own business and things, when for me, I grew up thinking more in terms of like, what can we do together and things like that.
Do you have a question over there?
If you would have to decide who would you marry, a teacher, psychiatrist, or an actor, who would it be?
I can't really. Actually, I feel like in terms of, I feel like everyone kind of brings something different to the table. in terms of, like mentors, people that I've looked up to. Everyone has impacted me differently, so I can't really say, I can't put one person on top, but at the same time, I feel like I've had a lot of good teachers actually here in Faribault High School who've been very positive and encouraging in that aspect of moving forward and things like that. But we're still growing. I'm still learning. But I can't choose, no.
Any more questions on that side? Then we'll come over here. Maddie, let's do 2 on that side, and then we'll come over here.
When you moved to Faribault, what was your favorite thing to do growing up?
What is your favorite thing to do, I guess? I don't know. I can't really pinpoint. I would say my favorite maybe time of year was probably summer. I love summer here, but also fall as well. I can't really pinpoint really what was my favorite thing to do, because when you're younger, you have a favorite thing to do, and then when you're older, it transitions to something else. So I can't really pinpoint it, but I just say being around friends, I guess. Yeah.
Is there a release date for your new movie?
Can you
Is
repeat
there a release date for the new movie?
Oh, Headlock. It's 2016. I don't have a release date exactly, but I'm also working on another film. Right now we're dotting the I's and T's for the contract. So hopefully I would leave and go to Cairo and Morocco and Germany at the end of this month. Yeah.
What grade were you put in when you first came to the United States?
What?
What grade were you in when you came?
Third. I think it was third grade. Mm-hmm. And I think that's also another thing too, where kids who immigrate to the U.S. At an older age. I've known kids who came here and went straight to high school, and finished all 4 years. And I think it's to me it was so optimistic to see someone basically come here with having no English, no background, and even like writing and reading, and just excel. And I think we have to appreciate that as well. Like, where does that determination come from? How does someone become so resilient in terms of, wanting to move forward in life and things like that?
We have another question over here.
I got 2 questions. Is it okay if I ask them?
Sure.
I know my parents, when they came from Ethiopia, they both had the birthday of January 1st. Do you have that same birthday?
No. Well, usually, the January 1st, actually, I felt like it was a very nice reference to reference that, because a lot of our parents have a January 1st birthday, and people are like, why is everyone born January 1st? I'm like, they're not. They're not born January 1st, as you can tell. But it's, because of the fact that, there was no writing, there's no dating in terms of, when someone is born, and they don't have birth certificates. So it's like, how do you determine when someone is actually born? So usually they would know what year they're born, and because the UN and the programs didn't really discriminate in terms of putting on a birthday. Sometimes they let them, maybe pick a birthday if they know the season they were born in. But they usually give everyone January 1st because it's easier to basically distinguish. And it's, like they say, it's like this celebration going on. So, it's your birthday and it's New Year's. So it is that kind of thing. But I felt it was very, to me, it's kind of like monumental, because it kind of determines that you are a refugee, because it's only refugees that have that birthday, unless you were actually born January 1st. But yeah, I think it's cool.
Okay, my other question is, are you single?
I like to keep my personal life personal.
We have a question over there.
How do you feel when you come first time America and like today you're different, everybody know you're famous, like what's different?
Can you repeat that, please?
Like when you come first time in the United States, like nobody know you, like you wasn't speaking any English, and like today you're famous, everybody know you, like what's different?
How was it different? Like maybe my experience when I first came to the U.S.?
Yup, and today.
Oh, yes. I mean, I feel like every child goes through a phase of, being different. Like you have high schoolers who come in as freshmen and they're trying to decide where they fit in, and to them, they're kind of different. You have students that are new students and they're kind of seen as different. But I think that being different in a way, it kind of puts you in a certain place that's like, for me, if I see someone that is, I wouldn't necessarily term it as different, but it's kind of like, okay, then what is that person's story? Where are they from? What is their background? And for me, at first it was hard. I mean, it's obviously hard to communicate when you don't really know the language. And I think it was my own determination in learning it as fast as I can so that I can push forward and actually communicate the things that I want to. Because when you can't, necessarily speak for yourself, it's hard. It becomes very challenging to express yourself. And being an expressive person, that kind of put me in a shadow, and I didn't want that at all. But I think that even when I was at Fairville High School, you see, if I saw a kid that I felt like, wasn't unheard, wasn't heard or anything like that, like I would go out to them and just ask them, hey, where you from, like this and that. Because sometimes it's just a matter of saying hi to someone, and it changes their whole day. And I think that it's about students wanting to get to know each other for themselves and not for, where they're at or whatever. And high school is hard. Come on, it's hard. It was hard for me. It was hard for me. So technically, it's kind of a place where you feel different, but in a way, you're on the same foot. You're all waking up every day, you're going to class, you have to pay attention, you have to not sleep, And so everyone's on the same plane. It's not about looking at someone differently. It's about, how do you transition into moving on, and how do you start a new life? And I think that you have to be optimistic about things and just be open-minded about things, yeah.
My second question, like when you come first time in the United States, how do you feel when you go to school? Like people smile without reason, like just trying to be nice.
Can you repeat that, please? I'm sorry.
How do you feel when you come first time in the United States? Like when you go first day of school, the people smile without reason, like just saying hi, like even you don't know them before.
How did you get to know people when you first came to the United States?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think one thing that I really was very thankful for the school that I went to was they would have a time for everyone to basically maybe talk about their background or where they're from in class. I talked about, I'm from Sudan, my parents are, Sudanese, I grew up in Ethiopia, and, they talked about the different places that you grow up. Like, I've grown up in a village, in a refugee camp, in a city, like, in many, many different places. So in a way, I kind of have different experience in terms of, what I can bring and what kind of background I have and how I can connect with other kids, because I feel like I kind of have a variety of things and how to transition in life. But I think it's about taking the strengths that you have as yourself, as a person, and putting that out there. A lot of what I appreciated was, a lot of how I communicated was through art, and, drawing or just even writing. Communicating with the teacher. Sometimes it's hard to communicate with the teacher about, where you necessarily your background and things like that. So I would write that down and let them read it. And sometimes it's like you don't even have to talk about it. But I think that it's about basically, putting yourself out there and wanting to get to know other kids and learning other people's stories and not being afraid, because I think that everyone has a sense of fear, the sense of the unknown in a way, and they're kind of afraid to jump into a situation they've never been in. But it's not hard. It's life, and I think that we're all just human. And even for me, acting it's nerve-wracking. it's nerve-wracking to go into a room of people you don't know, and you have to be emotional, and you have to be happy and sad and do all this stuff, this crazy stuff, that it's only for that moment. And I think that you have to put into your mind that fear is only temporary and it goes away, and that you can overcome basically anything.
We have time for 2 more questions. Let's go one on this side and then one on the other side here, maybe.
Who's your #1 favorite teacher here?
Stop. I have a lot of favorite teachers here, actually. I can't really say who's my #1 teacher, because you know that would create a conflict of interest.
Let's do one more question. Who's got one more question for Kuoth? Maddie, we have a hand over here.
What advice would you give to young actors?
Oh yes, very good one. I would say keep learning your craft. Keep trying to figure out because acting is telling a story. And fortunately, I always say I come from a culture that tells stories as a way of life. We don't have writing, we don't write down things, we tell a story. And that's how you're able to convey a message that is sometimes even carried from one generation to another. And I think it's your ability to portray, the empathy. It's mostly about empathy and how you can put yourself in other people's shoes. I think that's how you're able to even bring out a character in that sense. But also, keep pushing, know how to take criticism. Because you get a lot of criticism, you have to know how to store it. You have to know how to take bad criticism and throw it out, and good criticism and just put it in your pocket and go along. And I think it's mostly about, being determined in what you want to do.
Unfortunately, we've ran out of time, but Kuoth, the message that have resonated with me here from having you here and having your responses to the students is that we should reach out and learn from one another and get to know each other. At the high school here, in the very recent future, we're going to start a school club called Unity, which stands for Understanding Nationalities in Today's Youth. And in this club here, it'll provide a forum for students to come together, share their cultures, and learn from one another, which is the message that Kuoth is sending out here. And Kuoth, I want to thank you again, and on behalf of Faribault Public Schools, we got you a little flower here. Let's give Kuoth a round of applause. When the bell rings here, you are to go to your 4th hour class or lunch. Hang on tight here until the bell rings. Cool, it'll be all right if the students come up and talk to you personally for a little bit here too. Okay. Great. I thank you guys all for your time today. He's doing a selfie here.